He laughs on Tuesday and buries himself on Wednesday. That's the Morty story the show hides in plain sight. We meme the chaos, quote the punchlines, and then every few episodes the floor drops out and a teenager is left holding the cost of being human in a world that punishes it. Today, I'm counting down 5 choices that quietly broke Morty. Number 5. The chance Morty lost to cosmic timing. Rest and Relaxation opens at Harry Herpson High School. Morty overhears Jessica talking to friends. She's just broken up with Brad and is open to dating someone really special, someone unlike anyone she's considered before. Morty recognizes his opportunity, fixing his hair and muttering, "Holy shit," under his breath. Rick portals in before Morty can speak. He needs help on a quick adventure, 20 minutes maximum. Morty protests that Rick promised he could attend school. Rick dismisses this. The promise was made before Rick needed something. Rick drags him through a portal. The 20-minute adventure lasts 6 days. The episode shows the aftermath, Rick and Morty receiving medals for destroying a giant alien ship, both on the verge of complete psychological collapse. They sit traumatized, unable to process what happened. Rick decides they need a vacation at an alien spa offering a detoxification chamber that removes cognitive toxins. They enter the machine, which extracts what each person considers their most toxic personality traits and creates physical manifestations. Toxic Rick and Toxic Morty, trapped in the storage unit. Clean Morty's confidence soars because the machine removed all his insecurities, self-doubt, and anxiety. Back at school, Clean Morty becomes phenomenally popular. He insults Mr. Goldenfold during class, and the entire room erupts in applause. Jessica notices him. Clean Morty asks Jessica out. She accepts. At the restaurant, Clean Morty talks continuously at extremely high speed with unlimited enthusiasm. He cannot stop talking. He suggests Jessica try the alien detoxification treatment, describing it in manic detail. Jessica becomes uncomfortable and tells him the truth. She doesn't think this will work out because he would quickly grow bored with her. Clean Morty remains completely unfazed, accepts her rejection without emotion, and immediately picks up another woman at the bar. Meanwhile, Rick discovers Toxic Rick and Toxic Morty are alive inside the storage unit. He brings it home to re-merge. Toxic Rick deceives them. When they open the unit, he swaps places, trapping Clean Rick and Clean Morty inside while escaping. Clean Morty refuses to merge. He runs away and over 3 weeks becomes a stockbroker, making enormous money through completely unethical behavior. Rick tracks him down using Jessica, who calls Morty saying she misses him. Rick portals in and forcibly re-injects Morty with Toxic Morty, restoring his original anxious, insecure self. Jessica admits she didn't actually miss Morty much, she only participated because Rick kept drunk dialing her. The episode ends with Jessica back with Brad, tossing Morty a small crumb of affection. Morty's one genuine opportunity to ask Jessica out was destroyed because Rick needed him for an adventure that became a 6-day trauma marathon. When Morty finally got the confidence to date her, the detoxification removed his ability to actually connect emotionally. The window closed permanently because Rick's adventures don't pause for teenage milestones. Number 4. The identity Rick rewrites without permission. Morty's Mindblowers reveals systematic psychological manipulation. Rick and Morty are watching Interdimensional Cable when Morty asks if they have any interesting memories from adventures. Rick hesitates, then takes Morty to the garage attic and shows him a shelf filled with hundreds of color-coded vials. Each vial contains a memory Rick removed from Morty's mind, experiences Morty begged to forget, or that Rick decided Morty shouldn't remember. The episode shows several extracted memories through flashbacks. In one, Morty accidentally causes Jessica's death. In another, people die because of his decisions. Each memory represents trauma, moral compromise, or unbearable guilt. The critical issue isn't just that these memories were removed, it's that Rick owns the deletion mechanism. Every time Morty experiences something too painful or morally complex, Rick can simply vacuum it out. Morty has no control over his own memory architecture. His identity becomes a patchwork narrative full of holes, experiences he lived through but cannot remember, formative moments that left no conscious trace. This creates a fundamental problem for psychological development. When someone removes your ability to remember and process trauma, you cannot develop genuine resilience. You're forced into a cycle where you re-experience similar traumas without the protective knowledge that you've survived them before. You cannot learn from experiences you don't remember having. The power dynamic is inherently abusive. Rick decides what Morty gets to remember about his own life, which moral compromises Morty must consciously carry, and which get deleted, whether Morty even knows that large portions of his experiential history have been removed. This isn't just memory erasure. It's the systematic denial of Morty's right to his own psychological continuity. If these moments hit you harder than you expected, if you're feeling that quiet little ache for Morty, go ahead and tap subscribe before the algorithm buries this under another flood of Fortnite edits. Your support sends a message to the YouTube gods that talking about cartoon trauma is valid, and that these characters deserve more than just a punchline. Number 3. The relationship Morty chose to end. A Rick Convenient Mort presents Morty's first serious romantic relationship with someone who sees him as an individual rather than Rick's sidekick. Planetina is an elemental superhero controlled by 4 rings worn by separate individuals who exploit her, forcing her to perform at children's parties and corporate events. Morty helps Planetina gain independence by stealing her rings. Once free, she becomes an environmental activist. They begin dating. For the first time in the series, someone values Morty for who he is. The relationship offers a glimpse of normal teenage romance. The relationship deteriorates when Planetina's activism escalates to extremism. She travels to a coal mining operation, polluting the environment. Morty accompanies her, assuming they'll protest. Instead, Planetina incinerates approximately 300 miners. She justifies this mass murder as necessary for environmental balance. Killing humans who harm the planet prevents greater ecological damage. When Morty confronts her, Planetina maintains her actions were justified. The miners were destroying the environment. Their deaths prevent future harm. From her perspective, she's saving the planet through necessary violence. Morty faces a choice: accept that his girlfriend is willing to kill humans for her cause, or end the relationship. This represents the first time in the series that Morty articulates a clear moral boundary and enforces it. Choosing to maintain his moral principles means choosing isolation. Staying with Planetina would have meant compromising his ethics until they eroded completely. But leaving her means being alone with the knowledge that relationships in his life consistently require him to tolerate atrocities. Morty made the right choice, and it broke something in him anyway. Number 2. The day Morty refused to save Rick. Edge of Morty, Rick Die Rick Pete begins with Rick taking Morty to Forbodolon Prime to harvest death crystals, objects that show the holder all possible ways they might die based on their choices. Rick uses them tactically as a combat advantage tool. Morty touches a crystal and sees himself dying peacefully as an old man with Jessica comforting him at his bedside. Morty becomes fixated on this future, interpreting it as proof he'll marry Jessica and live a long, happy life. He decides every decision must align with the path leading to this specific death. On the flight home, Morty takes control of navigation, following the crystal's guidance. His erratic piloting crashes the ship. The crash kills Rick. A holographic projection of Rick appears, a pre-recorded protocol instructing Morty how to revive Rick using DNA from his corpse. The process is straightforward. Morty checks the death crystal. It shows that reviving Rick disrupts his path to dying old with Jessica. Morty refuses to revive Rick. He goes home alone, leaving Rick's corpse in the crashed ship. Rick's consciousness doesn't disappear. Years earlier, Rick created Operation Phoenix, a backup system transferring his consciousness to a clone body in an alternate dimension when he dies. Rick wakes in a parallel universe run by fascists. He dies repeatedly, jumping through multiple fascist dimensions before landing in Wasp Rick's dimension, which isn't fascist. Wasp Rick helps him get home. Meanwhile, Morty continues following the crystal's guidance. The crystal guides Morty into increasingly violent situations. A school bully threatens him. The crystal shows this death clearly. To avoid it, Morty must kill the bully first. He steals weapons from Rick's arsenal and follows the crystal's instructions exactly. He kills the bully, then police officers, then soldiers. Each murder is committed through mechanical obedience to the crystal. Morty allows himself to be captured and put on trial. Still following the crystal's prompts, he speaks seemingly random words that happen to be the dying words of the trial judge's deceased husband. The judge believes Morty is channeling her husband's spirit, declares him innocent, and immediately commits suicide. Rick and Wasp Rick track Morty to where he's used ferrofluid technology to transform into a massive cyborg monster. They remove the crystal by force, breaking his trance. The post-credits scene reveals the truth. Morty overhears Jessica talking about her future career plans. She wants to become a hospice care worker who comforts dying elderly patients. The vision wasn't Jessica as his wife. It was Jessica doing her job, professionally comforting a dying stranger who happened to be an elderly Morty from one possible timeline. He misinterpreted the entire vision. His Jessica future never existed. When Rick portals in asking for help on another adventure, Morty immediately agrees. The fury and desperation in his face is evident. He murdered multiple people, transformed into a monster, and destroyed any chance at normal life. All for a future that was never real. If you're into the deep cut side of Morty, subscribe. Back to number 1. Number 1. The reality Morty had to abandon. In Rick Potion number 9, Morty faces an impossible choice: abandon his entire reality or die with it. The episode begins with the flu season dance. Morty wants Jessica to fall in love with him, so he asks Rick for help. Rick creates a love potion using oxytocin extracted from voles mixed with Morty's hair, but fails to warn him about using it if the target has the flu. Jessica has the flu. When Morty applies the serum at the dance, it latches onto the flu virus and goes airborne. Within minutes, the entire planet becomes infected. Everyone not directly related to Morty genetically falls obsessively in love with him. Rick attempts to fix the situation with an antidote made from mantis DNA. This fails catastrophically. This ends the love obsession but mutates everyone into barely humanoid blobs. Rick dubs them Cronenbergs. Rick scans the multiverse and locates dimension C131, nearly identical to their own. In this reality, that dimension's Rick and Morty found a solution to an identical crisis, but died shortly after in an unrelated explosion. Morty looks back at his house one final time. His parents are screaming inside a biological nightmare. He steps through the portal anyway. They arrive in the replacement dimension, retrieve the corpses of their counterparts from the garage, and bury them in the backyard. Morty digs a grave for himself. He buries his own dead body while the sun rises over a world that looks exactly like home, but isn't. The episode ends with Morty sitting on the roof of his replacement house, knees to chest, watching dawn break. He doesn't call Rick Grandpa for half the episode afterward. This is the first time Morty sees Rick's science not as adventure, but as a weapon that just killed his entire world. He becomes a refugee in someone else's life, wearing someone else's identity, sleeping in a bed that technically belongs to a dead version of himself. Morty Smith's character arc across these 5 episodes demonstrates a pattern of forced sacrifices that systematically dismantle his capacity for normal human development. Each choice extracts a specific psychological cost that compounds over time. In Rick Potion number 9, Morty loses his ontological foundation. He can no longer trust that the reality he inhabits is authentically his. In Morty's Mind Blowers, Morty loses ownership of his own narrative identity through systematic memory erasure without his consent. In A Rick Convenient Mort, Morty loses his capacity for relationships when maintaining his ethical boundaries means accepting complete isolation. In Edge of Tomorty, Morty loses his ability to trust his own judgment after murdering multiple people for a misinterpreted future that never existed. In Rest and Ricklaxation, Morty loses his one realistic opportunity for normal teenage romance to Rick's adventures and artificial personality modification. The cumulative effect creates a specific type of psychological damage. Morty develops hypervigilance without the ability to prevent harm. He knows that any adventure could result in mass death, dimensional displacement, memory erasure, or moral catastrophe. But he also knows he has no real power to refuse participation. Rick will drag him into the garage regardless of protest. This creates learned helplessness combined with chronic anticipatory anxiety. Morty expects disasters but cannot avoid them. He knows he will be forced to make impossible choices, but cannot prepare for them because he doesn't know what form they'll take. Each new adventure carries the potential to destroy another aspect of his psychological foundation. By Season 6 and into Season 8, Morty's behavioral changes reflect this accumulated damage. In Season 8's How Poopy Got His Poop Back, we see Morty's increasing emotional detachment as he processes yet another bizarre crisis with barely a flinch. In Beetlejuice, his reaction to supernatural chaos is measured, almost routine. The panic that defined early seasons has been replaced by weary acceptance. He stammers less frequently not because he's gained confidence but because he's developed emotional numbing. He trusts people more slowly because multiple trusted figures have betrayed, manipulated, or endangered him. He moves through dangerous situations with less visible panic because he's been conditioned to accept that extreme danger is the baseline reality of his existence. The tragedy is not that bad things happen to Morty. The tragedy is that he's forced into a pattern where maintaining his survival requires continuously sacrificing pieces of his humanity. He cannot build a stable identity because his memories are edited. He cannot form secure attachments because his relationships are constantly disrupted by interdimensional chaos. He cannot develop a coherent moral framework because he's repeatedly forced to choose between equally unacceptable options. Season 8 continues this pattern. Even as Morty shows moments of assertiveness or competence, they come tinged with the resignation of someone who knows any victory is temporary, any moment of peace will be interrupted by the next portal gun activation. The show's willingness to let these costs accumulate without easy resolution is what makes Morty's journey so devastating to watch. Morty's character arc is not about becoming stronger through adversity. It's about the specific ways that inescapable repeated trauma reshapes a developing adolescent's psychological structure. The show documents how someone learns to function when their baseline reality includes dimensional displacement, memory manipulation, moral compromise, and the constant sacrifice of normal developmental milestones. Morty survives by becoming someone who can tolerate these conditions. The cost is that he can never become the person he would have been without them. That's not just comic relief, that's quiet heroism wearing a yellow shirt 2 sizes too big.